It's not clickbait. We made a boo-boo. We've only just uncovered what it may be, or what we hope it is. We found a puddle.
Boo-boo.
It's a mild boo-boo.
We're grown-up adults. It's a flipping mistake.
Alright, it's a flipping mistake. Oh. So I was getting these boards up in the utility a couple of days ago, and I spotted a wet patch. You see along here, it's kind of wicked along both sides there, so alarm bells were ringing. I was thinking it's water getting in behind the membrane somehow, and the more I thought about it, the more certain I was that it couldn't possibly be coming in there.
Yeah, everything up is dry.
Everything up is dry. The boards...
Thankfully we can actually still see that. We haven't got around to it.
Exactly,
yet.
we haven't sealed. This is the benefit of working slowly. So we pulled away the kitchen units down here. You can't really see it, but where the kind of overspray is, there is a bit of a wet track that goes all the way along. And therefore, what is showing up as a little wet patch in the corner, one room that way, is actually starting all the way up here with our door. And I knew exactly when I saw it what I'd done, what I'd missed, and that was the sill and not sealing that properly. It would be less of an issue with a window, or we wouldn't have seen it so quickly, but with a sliding door, the water goes in there almost intentionally. Water is coming down this sliding pane. This one comes down, the water comes over the framework, down onto the sill and away. The actual sliding half comes down, some will shed away, but in here is just a foam seal. Therefore that water makes its way down, it can get through into this channel, which then in turn is drained down onto the sill and out the front, and that's all how it's meant to be. The problem is, you need to make sure that the ends of the sill are sealed with a barrier, like a dam of silicone. I didn't do that. But what I can do, because we've got the wood fibre board here, I'm going to see if I can cut out a section of wood fibre, and then I can get in and I should be able to see the fault and where we need to pump in the sealant to stop that happening. So I'm hoping that if I cut out a square here, I can then see the end of our sill. You can see I blobbed in a little bit there in desperation last night, but I should be able to see where the frame is sitting down onto our sill, and that is the gap that we need to get to. Hearing protection on, because this thing is blooming, sounds like killer hornets. While the stud work isn't that wet, the water is coming through and hitting our Edgar Protect, which is of course waterproof, so in which case it just wants to run along it, and it's soaked down a little bit into our joist as well. So all of that should be sorted, but it's a case of how much can we see. Right, I've exposed everything we can, but I'm not quite there and I can't get to it from the inside. Basically the door has a couple of fins here and here, and we need to get past this one here, so I'm just going to drill a tiny hole, pump it full. I actually did a bit of a deep dive last night and read so many people had this problem. People just throwing windows in without doing this bit, putting silicone at the end of the sills, and it's the sort of thing you wouldn't notice until way further down the line. You're probably not going to be able to see it much here, but all I've done is just drill through the end of there, so now I can fill all of this about 10-15 mil deep, full of sealant, and that will dam off the end of here. Done the same the other end. That should solve it. What I'll then do is leave these uncovered, wait for a good old downpour and come out and just make sure that everything's bone dry. Then we can get on with the next leak, which I haven't told you about yet. Well, that's just about all I can do without taking the whole frame out. Just got to hope now. Back in the warm. I'm glad that's done. I'm hoping that that's done. We can now bring on the rain and be able to check it before we get the flooring down. As I alluded to earlier, it's not the only leak in the building. Let me show you what we're up against next. It might sound like a terrible excuse for building very slowly, but there are some big benefits, and that is when things go wrong, you can spot them. If we were doing this super quickly and I'd installed that door and got the flooring down a couple of days later, before we had any chance for a big rainstorm to happen and to spot those issues, that would likely have been hidden, and it would have been hidden under our vinyl flooring. We wouldn't have been able to see it. The first we would have known about it is probably either a structural issue or mold or really damp moisture coming up through the plasterboard. So we spotted that one just in time. Now the second issue I've got, and you're all going to tell me I'm an absolute numpty because I am. Our roofing membrane over the trusses and the rafters down the other end, and then we've got our steel corrugated roofing on top of that. I still haven't put the ridge trim on. So there's about 50 to 70 mil of exposed, a gap basically at the peak. What that means is that water occasionally has been able to travel underneath our roofing sheets and just drip off the membrane as it's designed to do so. But there is a hole in that membrane, or where it's worn through. Poor old Eden has a wet spot on the ceiling. Luckily that hasn't caused any issues. Number one is because we haven't got a ceiling up yet, but also because we've got a vapour barrier there. I need to get up, I need to put the ridge trim on, which I might try and do now. Right, so we need these. So these are the foam inserts which you normally put underneath your eaves, or in this case up on the ridge, to seal between your corrugated profile. Now of course we want as much airflow as we can underneath, especially with the anti-con linings, that's how it works. So I did debate not using this at all. We haven't used it at the eaves, but not using it at the ridge, I'm worried that weather could blow up underneath it. Dad actually came up with the idea that what we'll do is put these in and leave a space every section. These are, I guess, just under a metre, and by doing that we almost end up with ridge vents. Everything is still up here, it didn't blow away in the storm yesterday. These are our ridge trims. They've actually got a nice little wood grain finish on them. Not that we really asked for that, but remember the ridge trim will be the one thing that has to come off when the cabin's split in years to come. So I'm going to leave it just screwed down tight. I think these will wedge in just fine. There's no real risk there. So I'm going to start that end, because prevailing wind kind of comes this way. Out. This would dry naturally, and it has been on and off, little damp spot, but we're going to cut it out, put some fresh insulation in there, patch in another bit of vapour barrier, tape it all up and get on with putting up that ceiling. Okay, this could be straightforward, or it could actually be a lot more water up there than it looks. I knew that, I don't know what I was thinking. Just see where Joe is. I can't even turn the camera off. 3:15. Not even out of school yet, are they? Okay. It's exactly what I don't want to happen. Splashing on the walls. It kind of sticks. What have I got within running distance? So if we'd used PIR, like a Kingspan Celotex product here, we would have struggled to pinpoint where it is, because what happens, and it's the same that's happened to me in the past on one occasion, where water gets through the roof covering somewhere or some lead flashing. It hits the top of the board of insulation. It could then travel several metres and then show up in one corner. So you think there's a leak over here, but in actual fact it's well up on the ridge and it's been rolling down the back of your insulation and hitting there. So at least this does give us the spot. Worse to the wet bits. It's crazy because most of this is dry, it's just made its way, so it's only the bottom of the insulation which was remaining wet. Well, we've got great airflow. It's like wind rushing past me, which is super. It's really pretty good up there. Let me see if I can show you what it is that is going on up there. So our air gap's fine, goes up over the ridge, down this side. You can see there's a bit of a drape there between where an overlap in the membrane is. Potentially that is an issue, but I don't think it's going to be there because it's all dry below there. And I think just above this wet patch there, I can see a tear, which basically could be enough. So we're not talking about massive amounts of water coming in. We're just talking about a slow build-up of water which has got nowhere to go, and it's ponding. So I think that's a problem. I think we've sorted it with the ridge. I'm going to pull out anything wet, put something new in, put a temporary bit of tape up there, and then that way I can go back to it in 2 or 3 days' time, make sure it's dried out, make sure that after we have had rain, nothing else has come in, and then we can tick that box, I think.
Well, I've got good news and I've got bad news. Good news is the ceiling is completely fixed and the new pine ceiling is up. Bad news is, well, we didn't solve it with our retrofit silicone, and therefore it's just got to be done. It's all got to come out.
Right, like most things, it's easier in the long run to just get on and do it. So we've taken out the door and we're going to try and do a proper job this time. Actually, the water's still dripping out now, which just shows how much was caught in there. It's now dripping out. Now remember, I tried to do it retrospectively. Let me show you where that failed because we were still getting water coming in. So here's a little look at the sill now it's off. The water was draining down the front glass of the sliding section of the door, and then it hits the drain at the bottom, goes through the brush seals. The idea being that then it comes down through these drain slots here. There's one there. There's one there, and hits the top of this sill. This is obviously it would have been that way, and what had happened, you can see it's still wet here. It was coming, instead of coming straight over the front, some of it would come this way, and because to start with we didn't have anything at the end, nothing to dam the end. This is the little attempt to try and patch it from the end. It was pouring off the end straight onto our floor. So you can see here, this is a fairly decent job of getting it patched from the outside, but it just wasn't sealing all of it, and that's why it was still leaking. So we need to lift the door up 3 or 4 knobs to get onto that lip.
Yeah.
Right, we're finally done. I think we've solved it. So all being well, we're weatherproof. Let me show you a little bit of what we've had to do. I'm going to get the kettle out in a minute because I just want to pour a bit of water there and just make sure the water should only be able to go that way. And we've got to foam up and tape still, but I'll give you a quick look from the outside and then hopefully we can put this to bed. And then I'll give you a little update on the bedroom leak as well. We've got a seal along here now where the sill is sealed to the frame, and then of course we've got that good solid dam of silicone at the end. And then on the outside here, I was tempted to kind of cut in 2 more drain positions there because I think it's only really one there. There is one over here as well, and that just might have made it exit quicker. But you're right to get a kettle of water and we'll pour it in. Water is hitting the glass, coming down, goes down through the brush seals, and then it has to come down through here and across the sill. So by pouring some water in here, which seems an odd thing to do.
Really?
Yeah. Try not to spill over the front of those.
No, it's not.
So it should. There it is. It's coming out there. So I think there should be a hole
It's
here.
a thunderstorm!
Joe is simulating Storm Joe.
Monsoon!
Yeah. So that's good. And then there's the other drain. See, I think there should be one here. But hey ho. So job done. We can now put that to bed and just forget that ever happened and get on with fitting the kitchen. Hope you enjoyed that. Any window door fitting tips for other people who are not plonkers like me, leave them down in the comments. We'll leave it there. Thanks for watching. Remember, if you can, do it yourself. We'll see you next time.